Good morning. Good morning. How are you this day? Welcome this beautiful Tuesday morning. A bit cold. Yes, we're on, we're live, and we're here ready to go. And thanks for joining. And yeah. All right. So today we're going forward. Good morning. Yes, the coffee is ready, Rosario. I've got it right here. Nice, freshly ground coffee. I think it's a Kenya peaberry coffee, and very, very good. Mellow and just the way I like it. Well, this morning we're going to look at Revelation chapter 4. And we're getting into a very interesting scene we're going to see of the throne in heaven. And let me just set the scene for you. If you remember in chapter 3, we ended with a verse that said, I stand at the door and knock. And he who hears my voice opens the door. I'll come and eat with him and him with me. And then we come to chapter 4 of Revelation. And this scene is going to be described by John in the best words he could possibly give, because it floored him. It was mesmerized him. It was beyond his ability to describe. And so let's try and understand what he's trying to say as to what he saw, but maybe lacked the words to be able to express it. Verse 1 of chapter 4. After this, I looked, and there was before a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, come up here and I will show you what must take place after this. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was the throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. A rainbow resembling an emerald encircled the throne. And so let's just stop with that right now. We see here a scene in heaven. It said, after this I looked. After these things, after these messages that he had given to the different churches, which sort of symbolized it not only in that time, but churches throughout the ages. And he's talking about a future event that's going to take place. But before we get to that future event, he's giving a scene in heaven before we see what's going to happen on earth. And so he was on the Isle of Patmos, if you remember, and he's like spiritually snatched up from this tiny island and ushered straight into the indescribable presence of God. And so we see that John is trying to attempt to depict who God is. And he says things like, I was in the Spirit. There before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. It didn't seem he could see it very clearly. And then he describes a bit the one who was sitting on the throne. It's like he says here, and the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet. He's symbolizing and saying it was similar to, it was like. And John sees God's matchless worth and glory represented by this precious stones that we read about here and the rainbow. And so he sees lightning. And verse 4, it says, surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. And so we see here that there's this vision that he has, but you wonder, what are these 24 elders? Now, there's different interpretations as to what the elders represent. I mean, some people believe it was representative of the New Testament church wearing victory crowns. Some people see it as being angels who are selected specifically to lead and worship in heaven. I guess the one that I'm sort of, I lean to the most, I see the elders as being a select number of the redeemed who have been chosen to worship and serve before the throne of God. Others see the elders as being symbolic of 12 patriarchs of the Old Testament and the 12 apostles of the New Testament, symbolic of all those that have come to God throughout the history of the world. And regardless, we're not totally sure, but it says here in verse 5, they were dressed in white. So, I guess we're dressed in white, the redeemed or washed in the blood of the Lamb. And it said had crowns of gold on their heads. I guess too, as the redeemed, we're going to receive crowns. There's different crowns for those who are faithful. And from the throne came flashing of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. So again, this whole idea of thrones, elders, is talking about what it's going to be like in heaven. The mention here also of throne came flashing of lightning, rumbling, peals of thunder before the throne. 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. And also before the throne, there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. And so again, this idea, 7 burning lamps, 7 spirits of God, number 7 talking about perfection, 7 lamps talking about the God sees all things, everything is illuminated before him, sea of glass before the throne. Well, sea of glass, it looks possibly like something that we're representing purity. And then after that, we see here it says, in the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes in front and in the back. And then it goes describing these creatures. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. And each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around. And even under his wings, day and night, they never stopped saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. And so this description again that we have before the throne, although it's difficult to describe and to understand who these creatures actually were they angels, symbolic, of the way that they would honor God? 4 living creatures, maybe 4 angelic beings. Some call them seraphims, meaning burning ones. Other people call them cherubims, meaning protectors or guardians of the throne of God. But these 4 living creatures led all creation in worship of their almighty creator. And then verse 9 says, whenever the living creatures give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before whom sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. And they lay their crowns before the throne. I wonder, no matter what rewards we get in heaven, we're going to be so overwhelmed by the grace and the love and the mercy of God that whatever rewards we get, I think this will be sort of maybe what we'll do. We'll take those crowns and we'll just throw them at his feet and we'll declare, you're worthy, O Lord, our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. In other words, we acknowledge that everything that we have and happened in our lives is really from God, and that it was by his strength, it was for his glory, and because of your will, they existed and were created. And so I see John here standing in absolute awe. And probably the last thing I want to say this morning is, in the midst of this scene, I guess we get distracted by all the beings, the elders, the creatures, and so on. But really the central figure is the person who sits on the throne in heaven. And it's said that he is worthy. And I thought about that as to what does worthy really mean? Worthy means worship. Worship is ascribing worth to someone. It means attributing to that a person value, honor, devotion. That's the way we worship God. We turn all our attention, our affection, our adoration toward him. And in essence, when we come to church or when we're in our devotions, we get so easily distracted, and sometimes we go through the motions. But if we're really to be biblical and really give honor to him who sits upon the throne, we've got to learn how to worship. And to worship is you bring all your attention into play. You put aside and you make sure there are no distractions around you. And you give all your attention, your affection, and your adoration to him who sits upon the throne. Our thoughts wander so easily, and we must be those who say, no, I refuse to let myself be distracted. I am in the presence of the King of Kings. And I'm going to honor him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. You see, this is much more than just an earthly scene. We get so caught up in an earthly level, but when we look to heaven, we see the grandeur and the majesty of the one who sent his only son to die for us. And he lives and he loves us. And today we, like the angels, like the 24 elders, cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. I just encourage you to read this over and meditate on it and let the power of these truths really spur you on, because we cannot remain indifferent. And a bit like John, we should be there with our mouths gaping wide open saying, that's amazing. Our God reigns, and he's got the world in the palm of his hands. So that's my word for you today. Be encouraged and declare with me that he who sits upon the throne, all things were created by him and for him, and we are those who are included in that. Have a great day. Lord bless you. We'll continue on with chapter 5 next week, talking about the fact that worthy is the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. That's next Tuesday. Thanks for being with me. Look forward to seeing you again. Have a great week.